Mr. President.
Senator from Oklahoma.
I would note my colleague from the state of Delaware that if I heard him correctly, we've just now had a hearing on a nominee for the D.C. Circuit Court. He's not even on the executive calendar because he hadn't even been voted out of the Judiciary Committee. So he makes a lot of great points, but I think that the fact that we're talking about a potential judge that hadn't even cleared the Judiciary Committee yet may be a bit premature. And he will get a fair hearing. And I think if we noted that more judicial nominees were approved in the last two Congresses than the two Congresses before under the last 4 years of the Bush administration. I rise to speak this evening. There's been a lot in the news, but one thing that hadn't been in the news very much is the third and final report of the Government Accountability Office in terms of looking at duplication within the federal government. And I hope as the American people listen to this, they'll take a couple of things away. Number one, we have a great organization called the Government Accountability Office. They've done a wonderful job. We mandated this 4 years ago. They have been on time with their reports, and what they have shown us has been tremendously revealing. The first thing I'd want Americans to note is Congress has failed to act on the first two reports. No substantive action whatsoever. One significant thing in the Senate, the elimination of the ethanol mandate. With this report today comes an estimated $98 billion a year in savings. What we take by looking at this report could potentially yield us $98 billion in savings by eliminating duplication of what they just found in this one report. And let me just go through it for a minute. They found 679 different renewable energy programs across 23 agencies, not across the Energy Department, where we should be having, if we're going to have renewable programs, that's where we should have it, across 23 different agencies, of which we spend $15 billion a year. They found instances where we're given grants from different agencies to the same projects for the same thing, spending 3 times as much money as we should be spending on the one project, even if we didn't have that. So the potential for us to work our way out of the consequences of a sequester are at our fingertips. Here, drug treatment and abuse, drug abuse prevention and treatment, 76 separate programs, not run through the Department of Health and Human Services, run through 10 different departments with overlap that shows no metrics, but multiple agencies having programs doing exactly the same thing. $4.5 billion a year. That's half the size of my Oklahoma state budget a year. Catfish inspection. I saw in the president's budget today, he proposed 3 different agencies you have to meet the requirements for if you can have your catfish inspected. The only thing that they didn't recommend in the budget today is getting rid of the Agriculture Department because they approve your cheese pizza, but the FDA approves your pepperoni pizza. So if you're a pizza maker, you have to comply with one agency on one type of pizza and another agency on a different type of pizza. I mean, Defense Foreign Language Support. These are people that come in and help us learn other languages, interpret for us other languages so that we can have an effective response and not have a communication error. We have 159 different programs in the Pentagon alone, but 10 other agencies. What they're estimated is that we could save tons of money. We don't know exactly how much it costs because the Pentagon doesn't know how much they're spending on it, which is another one of the problems that the GAO report said this week is one of the reasons they can't estimate the savings more accurately is because the majority of the agencies have no idea what they're spending on these programs. Well, the question I'd have is why not? And if they don't know what they're spending, why aren't we doing something about it? higher education assistance, 21 different programs, 4 different agencies, not all in the education department, which is where I would think we would do education assistance from. It's $174.7 billion a year. Now that includes Pell Grants, that includes student loans, the cost associated with the student loans. Veterans employment training. We have 6 programs, not all of them run by the Veterans Department, but run by the Veterans Department and other agencies. We're spending $1.2 billion, and here's what we know. We're running these programs, and veterans' unemployment, even though they have a skill when they come out of the military, is higher than what the average is in the country. So it's obviously not working. Also in the report is something that's very important to me, and let me find it if I might for a minute. GAO's report exposes a government office that does some good things. It's called the National Technical Information Service. It was established in 1950 and tasked with collecting and distributing certain reports. Despite the fact, here's what GAO found, 75% of the information that NITS supplies, all you have to do is Google it. You don't have to go to NITS. All you have to do is Google it. So 75% of their budget is spent providing reports to other government agencies and other people that you can get with the touch of your iPhone. Now, why would we continue to do that? So this is just one example that I bring up. We're continuing to fund an agency that 3/4 of what they do has no bearing on it, and if it went away, wouldn't affect us at all. The other thing is they charge other federal agencies a fee for this information that the other federal agency at a touch of their computer can get the same information for free. So it's another case of inefficiency. So what else did the GAO report show? What the GAO report showed is that we've done nothing of significance in the last 2 years based on what they've recommended we do given their first 2 reports. Our office calculates, based on the 3 reports the GAO has given us, that we could save in excess of $250 billion a year if we would follow the recommendations of the Government Accountability Office. And so if you're sitting out there wondering why we're having tax proposals increased in the president's budget and that we're having such a hard time with the sequester, you only have to look one place, and that's Congress. Congress refuses to follow and do the oversight. We've had GAO do a lot of it. We refuse to pass amendments that eliminate duplication. We refuse to make the tough choices. And so consequently, we're spending $250 billion a year. That's $2.5 trillion over 10 years that we shouldn't be spending. Where's the money come from to pay for that? It comes from our kids. And it doesn't just come in dollars. It comes from a reduced standard of living and limited opportunities in the future because we don't have the courage or the work ethic to address the very real issues that are in front of us on the tips of our fingers where the money is, where we could actually save money. We've had almost 1,000 days since the first reports come out. We've done one significant thing in the Senate. We've eliminated the ethanol tax credit. Saved $6 billion the first year, about $4 to $5 billion afterwards. That was one thing we did. We were fought tooth and nail as we did it, but we got it done. So one thing, $6 billion in 3 years out of $250 billion. No wonder the confidence level in the Congress is at 13%. Because what we're actually doing is throwing away our kids' future as we fail to address these issues. When we're spending money that we don't have on things that we don't absolutely need, and we're borrowing money against our children's future, I can't think of a greater immoral act of the Congress. Now, it's not red hot lit up like some of the more controversial issues, the gun bill we're going to have or immigration. But I would tell you, it's going to have just as much a profound effect if we were to address it in terms of the future of our country, the health of our country, and the job-creating capacity for our country. And then what is it about your senator or your congressman that keeps them from having the courage to challenge the status quo? And I know what it is. It is the desire to get reelected by not offending anybody. And so we don't have, though, tough oversight hearings. We won't allow bills through committees that actually eliminate. There's a bill that's passed the House that's sitting on the docket right now. It's called the Skills Act. It takes 47 job training programs and puts them into 6. It saves billions of dollars a year. It puts metrics on the outcome, and we won't even bring it to the floor. Won't even bring it to the floor. Save $5 to $6 billion a year. Plus, markedly improve the outcome of our job training programs. But it's not here. Past the House sitting. The House is doing oversight in every committee right now. The Senate's not. The House is reading the GAO reports and acting on it. They're not right 100% of the time. They're right about 95% of the time. But you're never going to do anything about it unless you have an oversight hearing to actually find out for yourself. And nothing happens unless you actually write a bill to change things. And yet that's not the emphasis in the Senate. There can be no greater emphasis than us to get out of the financial troubles that we're in. There can be no greater emphasis than us to create an environment that produces jobs in this country by quitting wasting money at the federal government level. Our answer is more government, not less. Our answer, according to the president's budget, is more taxes, not less. I commend the president. He's got $25 billion worth of programs that he wants to eliminate in his budget, $25.8 billion. But he could send over what the GAO said and eliminate $250 billion a year. But the problem's not really with the president. It's with us. It's our intransigence to do our job and keep in our focal point what is most important. And what is most important is our future and the capability for us to create opportunity in the future for our children and our grandchildren. I've been fighting this for 8 years. There's a lot of oversight that's been done, tons of reports. The American people are going to eventually learn everything that's in this because there's an app coming out that's going to be on your cell phone real soon, and you can find out anything about everything about where the government's wasting money. You'll be able to punch it. You'll be able to look at an address in your own city and see how much money that company or that business or that farmer got of your federal taxpayer dollars. And you'll be able to see that in about 3 months. And when the American people actually really find out our incompetence, it won't matter that you didn't offend somebody. They're going to see that you didn't do your job. And we're not doing our job because we're not addressing the things that we actually have some control over. What do we do now? Here's what GAO explains. Although the executive branch and Congress have made some limited progress in addressing the issues that we've previously identified, additional steps are needed to address the remaining areas to achieve associated benefits. A number of the issues are difficult, but not impossible. Implementing many of the actions will take time and sustained leadership. The key word there is leadership. Who's going to lead in the Senate to solve our problems? It's not party identified. Real leadership about solving the real problems in front of us. It's time for each congressional committee in the Senate to undertake the waste and overlap identified by GAO within their jurisdiction and begin writing bills to consolidate and eliminate these programs and put metrics as far as performance on every one of them. It's also time for the White House to put some real muscle into their proposals coming through OMB. I'm thankful we're going to have a new OMB director. She's going to be terrific. She has the skills, the dedication, and the qualifications, and I praise the President for nominating her. She's going to fly through the Senate because she's really super qualified for the job. Plus, she's going to know what she's doing. It won't matter what she does if we don't respond, if we don't do our work. Mr. President, I'd like to take time now just to spend a moment or two on the guns issue. I spent a lot of time over the past 2 months thinking about Sandy Hook. I actually met with a large number of those people today. And I'm an A+ rated member, lifetime member of the NRA. I firmly believe in the Second Amendment, and I firmly believe in the 10th Amendment. And we're hearing a lot of politics about the gun situation. But what we're not hearing is how do you really keep guns out of the hands of people who shouldn't have them? That's what we need to be addressing. Now, whether or not that would prevent a Sandy Hook or not, nobody knows. But there are some things we do know. What we do know is the vast majority of people who are convicted first time in a gun crime didn't steal their gun. And they didn't buy it from a federally licensed firearm dealer. They bought it from one of us. And the very fact that we're going to have a piece of legislation go through here that will not solve the real problem of keeping hands out of the mentally impaired and felons is a shame. And there are ways that we can do that. I haven't talked to one gun owner that I know that doesn't agree with the fact that they'd like to be able to know that if they sold their gun, they didn't want it to go into the hands of a felon or somebody mentally impaired. And yet we get hung up on records. And the proposal that comes from Senator Toomey and Senator Manchin and Senator Kirk is a step forward. I won't deny that. But tell me how a record, which is only going to be looked at after a crime's committed, is going to help anybody that's a victim of that crime. It's not. So if you really want to solve this problem, what you've got to do is put in the hands of us Americans who are law-abiding the ability to know we didn't sell our gun to somebody that's on the NICS list. Give me the ability to know when I go to sell my gun to a stranger that they're not on that NICS list. Now, that's been rejected out of hand because there's no record with it. And the reason there doesn't need to be a record is because we're putting an onus on responsible citizens doing the right thing. Plus, the government has no right to have a record of when I transfer a gun. They do have a right to expect me to be a responsible citizen when I go to sell my gun. So the question is are we as a body going to take something that's far less than appropriate to actually keep guns out of the hands of felons and the mentally impaired and call it a day, which that's what's getting ready to happen? Or are we going to actually make a difference and not impair Second Amendment rights at all and not impair 10th Amendment rights? Because we give states supremacy on that. If they want to do something more or different, they can. And so we're going to go through all this debate. We're going to have all these amendments. I thank Senator Reed for making an open amendment process. I called and talked to him last night. I said, I'm happy to support going to this bill, provided we use the regular Senate procedures and that we actually get to offer amendments that are germane to this bill in any number of ways. And so he's going to allow that. And I take him at his word that he's going to allow that. But when it's all said and done, will we really have made a difference for those families who are wanting us to make a difference? Will we really have made a difference? And if you don't allow responsible citizens the ability to know whether or not they're selling their gun to a felon or a mentally impaired person, you haven't made any difference. You've made a lot of noise, but you haven't made a difference. And let me tell you why the Toomey Manchin proposal won't work. The largest gun show in America is in Tulsa, Oklahoma. It's called the Wanamaker Gun Show. Tens of thousands of people come to it twice a year, maybe 3 times a year. You're going to impede the sale by requiring an FFL license at that, which is to say a gun dealer at that show is going to be required to do a background search against the NICS list for somebody who buys a gun at the show, whether they're buying from that dealer or not. So the first thing that's going to happen is the federal firearms licensed dealers are going to say, oh, I want a fee for transferring this gun, for doing the work. Rightly so. I don't blame them. What's the option? Well, the option that's going to happen is the people are going to make the deal to buy the gun, and then 2 or 3 days after the gun show, they're going to buy the gun because they won't be at the gun show anymore. Now, look at the opposite side of that. If you had a portal where you could get a certificate that says you're not on the NICS list and you can buy a gun anytime you want, anywhere, and somebody selling you a gun can have a PIN code to make sure that's you and also see your ID, whether you're in a gun show or outside a gun show, the responsible gun seller is going to know they didn't sell a gun to somebody that's mentally impaired or a felon. So we're going to have all sorts of statements, but what we're going to do isn't going to decrease guns in the hands of felons and the mentally impaired. So we can say we got to win, but if we want a bill to get through the Senate and to get through the House that'll actually make a difference in people's lives so that felons aren't empowered to buy guns and the mentally impaired aren't empowered to buy guns, you got to do something different. Now, my friends in the Second Amendment community don't even like my proposal. I understand that. But there's no impairment when all you have to do is go to your cell phone and be able to get a clearance to know somebody's not on the NICS list. So we get to decide which way. We're going to do it in a way that smells good and looks good but doesn't do anything? Or are we going to fight to do something that actually makes a difference? I hope we choose the latter. I'm not convinced we will. The reason Senator Manchin couldn't get me to agree on what he has agreed with Senator Toomey is because I don't think it's going to work. I think the vast majority of gun purchasers at gun shows are going to wait to buy their guns later from the very same people that were going to sell them at the gun show. So they don't have to pay a fee, and so they don't have to wait 3 or 4 days on a background check. So if that happens, what good have we done? How have we made a difference? We haven't. And the sad fact, as a practicing physician and having done training in surgery, I got to operate on a lot of people who had the consequences of a weapon. And Oklahoma's a gun culture, and I own multiple guns. And I cherish my Second Amendment right. But with that right comes some responsibility to do the right thing. Liberty without responsibility isn't liberty. And it won't last unless we attach responsibility to it. So if we really believe in the Second Amendment, and we really believe in the 10th Amendment, we'll relook at what we're going to do in terms of gun transfers. And there's a way to do it that will actually make a big difference in people's lives in this country and actually make it through the House. What we're proposing, what we're seeing proposed right now, is never going to pass the House. And so consequently, we will have done something in the Senate with no long-term consequence to actually make a difference for the American people. Mr. President, I thank you for your time, and I yield back the floor and notice the absence of a quorum.
Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Alexander.